So I wanted to start at the beginning. How did you get started on social media, and when did you start feeling like you were getting traction there? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so my evolution in media is a pretty lengthy one. It started over 20 years ago. I actually just started to bring science into the community. It's sort of as people get to know me, they find that I'm a bit obsessed with education and teaching the next generation. And my full-time job is chemistry, but I really feel that science education has been webbed everything that I've been a part of throughout my whole life. So I've taken science to the community, and along with that, I put together a chemical chem science show on community public access television, which is a local television station, and ended up winning an award for making that television show. And from there, I started to present science on a morning show on an ABC affiliate, WZZM in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And along with that, I was still taking science to the community. One of my favorite of all things that I've done is put together a science program at a children's hospital where on Fridays, the kids would come to the schoolroom at the hospital and do science with chemical chem. Well, when the pandemic hit, of course, I still needed to get out to the kids and still get them excited to do science. And so I turned to social media, and TikTok was a platform at the time that I found was getting some traction, especially for that next generation, and started to put out videos. And it was interesting because I started off doing the TikTok format in regards to I'll just do a really cool science visually, science demonstration, put it with some nice music, just kind of jive it up a bit. And it was, they were light, but it was really interesting to see that once I started to put some explanation, real simple science explanation to what they're watching, it took off. And it was so welcoming to see that, kids want to be entertained, but they do want to learn. And if I can bring it down to their level, they're excited. They're just as excited as they see me excited presenting it to them. So yeah, I've been presenting science for pretty much my lifetime as a teacher. Yeah.
That's great, and we'll definitely get back to that point about understanding the format and understanding what people are looking like in a bit. But I want to start talking then a little bit about science brands and how they're approaching social media and such. Do you think that science brands, must be using social media, and why do you think that is?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the same for me using social media. If I have a need to teach the next generation, I need to go where the next generation is. So if brands have a need, whether it's sell a product or just educate people as a whole, social media, as we know, I mean, more than half America's population is on TikTok. It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about how Hulu, how now has the streaming ads, and the podcasters it was a millennial generation podcast, and they shared about how during the commercial time, it's a great time for them to get up, take a bathroom break, but really just scroll on their phone, so they're not watching the TV commercials, even on streaming apps like Hulu. They're looking at the social media app, really. That's where the population is hanging out, for sure.
Yeah, so then I think that also gets to the idea of creating content that is appropriate to the given channel, because I think that if you were to put one of those commercials just onto TikTok, it might not necessarily perform great. So what do you think about this idea of like channel specificity to content?
Yeah, I mean, as we have all seen, with the movement of social media, it has also created larger bubbles, and it has put us in different worlds. And there's so much where, I feel myself being in academia and of course being in STEM, I am in two worlds. And nowadays I call it my LinkedIn world and my TikTok world. And they are two totally different worlds. And when I work with brands, I find that their world is LinkedIn. And the communication that occurs on that platform is a different language. It's like speaking a different language. When I go to my platforms, whether it's TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, I am speaking a different language because I know the audience. I've been there. And one thing I'm seeing, with some brands that I've been working with, get it. But there's still a fair amount, especially in STEM, of brands that really don't understand what it is to be in a TikTok bubble, what it is to be in, and it's not in any way, I know some people will say it's like dumbing down the information. It's not, like I said, it's just speaking a different language.
In how you prepare the content and things of that nature, for sure. I think we have an example that we can kind of show that off.
But what I am sharing are two videos, and one video, they both performed pretty well, and they're both working with brands. And one was working with a brand in which the script was a constant rewrite. And I wrote it as authentic chemical Kim in the language that I speak when I'm on the TikTok platforms. And, when I share that with the brand, of course, they will make some revisions, making sure that, of course, with regards to, legality, is the language okay? But, one video you're gonna see the performance wasn't nearly as good as the other video because that brand basically wrote the script. At the end of the day, it was their language, not Chemical Kim's language. And, and my audience is going to see that. The reason that brands do come to creators like myself is because they recognize that, we do have a following, we can reach a good amount of people, but the recognition also needs to be that, well, you're picking me, so you need to give that allowance to the creator to put together the content.
Hydrogen fuel cell technology is a game-changing innovation. For more than a century, the go-to fuel for vehicles has been petroleum. When we burn petroleum in our vehicles, it emits vast amounts of CO2, a major contributor to global warming. But did you know an alternative to petroleum exists? This alternative is abundant, fully recyclable, easy to obtain, and when burned, only releases a byproduct that we all drink, water. Hydrogen fuel cell technology is a game-changing innovation. I am thrilled to announce that Foothill Transit, the leading public transit provider in 22 cities across Los Angeles, has taken a bold step towards sustainability, climate change mitigation, and cleaner air for all. They have purchased 33 hydrogen fuel cell buses, the largest procurement of its kind in North America. By adding just one additional ride each week on Foothill Transit, you'll have the chance to be part of a greener tomorrow, experience the future of alternative fuel firsthand, and enjoy the personal benefits that come with supporting sustainable transportation options. I made this biodegradable plastic right in my own kitchen. Bioplastics, a type of plastic made from renewable sources, offer an exciting solution to the plastic waste crisis. Starch, a natural polymer composed of glucose molecules, vinegar, a dilute solution of acetic acid, act as a plasticizer to help break down the starch and make it more flexible. Adding the vinegar and heating the mixture, the starch molecules break down, creating a thick, light gel substance. This mixture can be poured and cooled into a mold, creating a bioplastic that can be used in various applications. So why are we not seeing more bioplastics in the market? The good news is that companies like Beyond Plastics are actively developing bioplastics and other sustainable materials to reduce the environmental impact of plastic waste. Beyond Plastic is focused on creating biodegradable and compostable materials, including food packaging, bags, and consumer products. Beyond Plastic is leading the way towards a more eco-friendly future.
So just guesses, show of hands, which one do you think is more authentic Chemical Kim? And I know, I'm sure this might be the first time many of you are meeting me, but just from my description, my background, video 1 or video 2? Absolutely, absolutely. And you'll see with regards to the stats, first video that I did with 2,300 views, the second 122 views, the engagement, 151 comments, over 1,000 shares. That brand that worked with me, they really actually did nothing to my script. I knew that I needed to put their message in, so I put it at the end because I know that the first part of your video is where you get the most view. You tend to grab your audience. You have to grab your audience within 3 seconds of a video. And my followers follow me because I basically present science in a way that you do this at home. My biggest encouragement for that next generation is, yeah, you're watching it here. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. But don't just watch it. If you're excited about it, do it. And I try and present science that they can do. Everything from just going into the dollar store and pulling together like 10 experiments walking out of that dollar store. So, when brands do reach out to me and there's no hands-on component, there's nothing that really shows authentic chemical chem, they're going to tank. If they just want me to do a commercial, that's understandable, but they have to also recognize that it's not going to perform as well.
And those were unboosted metrics. There was no pay.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. So these were not whitelisted. These were not pushed by any paid ads.
Yeah, and I think that there's a differential in how engaging the material is and everything like that. In other areas, I've heard about this idea of the cost of dull. That if you create dull content, you have to pay more to push it out there. But if you make stuff that works for the channel and such, you see better results from that. And I think that that's something that you've seen a lot, right?
Yeah. And I know that this world of social media is very new and it's moving. We can't just say, okay, is this going to stay? What's going to be the next, right? We do have now spatial video recording abilities with the iPhone, the new smart glasses, we're moving to this new tech. Will that be the next? There's always this, there are so many changes. But right now in this world of social media, there's that movement now. This is where brands are going, right? This is where they're reaching to creators, the authentic creators, to push the information. But, and I don't know if this is going to be one of your questions, but I do want to address this big sort of disconnect, I think, between creators and brands. And that is that there's so many brands that will then say, okay, chemical chem, let's make a video. You make a video and it is authentic chemical chem. It's great. But, and this is actually only as recent, if I did this maybe 4 years ago, I didn't necessarily need to disclose that this was an ad video. But on all platforms, I do have to disclose this is a paid advertisement. Well, you recognize, I think, and I hope brands can start to understand this, that those platforms want to make money. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, they have the ability to either put those videos on FYPs or not. And they know that if it is a paid advertisement, brands should be whitelisting those. They should be pushing those. And I've worked with a few big brands that don't do that, and the videos tank and they could be fantastic. They could be so very similar to videos that I've had millions of views on. But they're not getting the views because these apps do have that expectation. It's like this: if you were to go back in the day when we did TV ads and go to maybe Modern Family and say to an actor on Modern Family, hey, can you do this advertisement while you're doing the TV show? And they're like, yeah, sure, but that's weird. The commercials are during the break of the TV show, and those commercials are paid for. They're pushed, right? It's gonna, it's the same thing on the social media, on the platforms, absolutely.
Okay. And do you have any, on this topic of influencer marketing and such, do you have any other advice for brands who maybe haven't done anything like this before? How do they pick an influencer, other than you, of course, obviously, that would be a good fit for their brand? What would you give them advice of how to start out with influencer marketing, especially in the maybe B2B space, which is a little bit less common for that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think this also becomes where it's challenging for brands, because we are so educated as marketers, right? We work so hard, and we saw this great presentation with AI and how we can make these really polished videos. But what's crazy in the world of social media is that you'll see these amazingly large creators, even myself, that we're just filming with our iPhones. We're not making these beautiful edited, studio quality videos. But that's what people like to watch. They really do enjoy watching that because they can maybe connect with us in that regard. So I think it kind of becomes this strange world where, you'll put a video up on social media that you may not do any work on, and it just blows up. Okay. So for example, if you do want to look recently, yesterday, I posted a video about the dangers of DHMO, right? And it got crazy views and crazy engagement, and it still is. People are loving it. The video quality, when you see, I filmed it in my office on my horrible, like, webcam. I was just like in a moment, I'm like, I'm gonna, and it's the horrible quality. But if there was a brand behind that, so it's interesting because there's really like no magic number when it comes to like what's going to be the best video to succeed on social media. I mean, look at the Stanley mug, right? That evolved for many reasons, but one with regards to the marketer working for Stanley, I'm not sure the gentleman's name, but one video that blew up was just a simple video of a woman showing how her car caught on fire, and she showed how her Stanley mug survived. And this marketer from Stanley reached out to the woman, bought her a new car, and the rest is history, right? We know the story. Mr. Beast, one of the first brands that he did, and I don't know if you know Mr. Beast, he's the biggest creator on YouTube. Millions, right? Millions. One of the first brand deals he did is not just share an advertisement in his video, but said to that brand, would you give me $10,000 so I can give it to a homeless person? And he recorded that. And that just took off with not just for that brand, but also for him, So there's these like little tips and tricks, but it's really, right now in our world of social media, there's no magic number. There's really no magic except to really have a consistent creator that you work with. And I think what's most important, and I share this with my fellow creators, is to have a really positive creator, a creator that really is doing good. That was partly with that $10,000 give. One thing that I would love to do with my platform is to start to set up a scholarship for those that are going into STEM education to pay for the time that they have to student teach. I think that would be a positive message, that working with a brand. So if a brand were to approach me and say, hey, let's do this. The deal I did with Pfizer, I thought it was fantastic. Pfizer reached out to me and said, we don't want you to advertise Pfizer. We just want to support science education. So we're going to offer you some money to put together 2 science education videos. That was fantastic. Like, thank you, Pfizer. You are doing good. So I think there's that aspect too, to show the goodness that you're offering to the community at whole.
I have several different follow-up questions to that. But one of them that I think maybe jumps out to more practical side is also about people who want to be starting to do this in-house too. And it's one thing to recruit somebody from the outside, but then maybe if you were wanting to take on this responsibilities, like try to create a content creation engine there, what would be your advice to a brand that wanted to take that route instead?
Yeah, so I would advise this for both those that work in the media agencies and brands. And I know this sounds silly, but just create a page for yourself and just create some content just to see what that feels like. And just being your authentic self, whether it could be about you and your dog just taking daily walks, nothing that really shows your brand, just you creating content. Because again, as I mentioned, we hang out in 2 different worlds. And I think it's important for us to put ourselves into other people's shoes. And if you're looking at, as a brand, to tap into the social media world, you need to spend time there. You need to see what it feels like to create videos, feel what it feels like to get comments on your videos. That's the other really challenging aspect as a creator, as you can imagine. I've often shared with other creators, to recognize that your platform is your home. So you have an allowance to kick people out of your home if they're being mean to you. You don't need to repost them. Why would you do that? Taylor Swift is not up on the stage hearing anyone in the back saying, "You suck, we hate you." And she's not saying, "Oh, come up here to the stage and let me give you the mic so you can say that," right? But as creators, if we repost that hate, that's what we're doing. We're giving the hate the voice. So, I think it's important for brands to see the whole aspect, and also media agency, that whole aspect of what it is to be a creator. So hang out there. That would be my number one.
I think that that's definitely important in any social media platform as well, not just TikTok as well.
Oh, 100%.
And it goes back to this idea of channel appropriate content too, of getting a feeling for what are the trends, what's working well, what isn't. What do you think about that idea of like trend following? Like, how much do you feel like you have to keep on top of everything that's happening and respond to every, viral dance or whatever? Is that something that you feel like you are bound to do, or how do you approach it?
I think it varies from creator to creator. I myself, I don't, just because, I don't have the end goal of getting the likes and getting the followers. I have the end goal of making science accessible and inclusive for everyone. And so, yeah, I might go a month or two where I might see a decrease in followers or a decrease in views, but I stay that steady course, recognizing that maybe this is a time for me to do a reevaluation of my content and see if I'm, needing to do some change up to the audience that I'm not speaking correctly to. I have taken advantage of Hey Jen on the translation, and it was an incredible experience. With a couple of my videos, I did translation into Spanish. And I did that because when I look at my analytics and I see that on Meta, which is Instagram and Facebook, my second largest following is in Mexico. And I know in Central America, unlike if I were to have some following in Europe, their primary language is Spanish, right? And my wife's primary language is Spanish. So I did some Spanish translations, and I fooled my audience in that they really thought I spoke Spanish. But I did it because I recognize that I have a lot of young followers that watch Chemical Kim in English, but their parents only speak Spanish. And the feedback that I got was tremendous, because these moms were saying, "I can share my video now with my son. We can have a conversation because I can understand now what your video is saying." So it was really a great moment. And so those things, always recognizing you need to continually change and evolve for your audience.
Great stuff. I've got a question about working as a content creator with brands. I know that on a lot of these social platforms, particularly the video-centric ones, there are a lot of third-party ad tech, martech outfits that will, seed your content to give it a boost. What's your feeling about that? Do you do it in some of these brand engagements, or do you try and steer clear?
Yeah, I think when brands work with me, they know that, it's nice for me to share their message, but they do recognize that my platform is not necessarily set up just for that reason, So, I guess from my end, and I can't speak for all creators, but from my end, I just really do keep it as simplistic as possible when I set up things with brands. I dive too much into, if there's going to be a situation where, and I'm guessing you're talking about like production in terms of like producing working with a third party.
There's companies that will seed your content outside the platform.
I've never done that yet. No, but I think a lot of creators like myself, we like to hold our stuff dear.
Thank you. This is really interesting. I've got some questions about the early days. So there's two parts to the question. The first is, what things did you do that help you grow your following? And the sort of second part to that question is, was it like slow and steady wins the race, or was there like a trigger point where it all just sort of went woo exponential? Like, what was that experience like? What did you do?
No, that's a great question. And again, this is where social media becomes sort of a crapshoot, because for some creators, yeah, it's that one viral video and then everyone gets to see them, But for me, because I think I've been in media for so many years, it has been slow and steady. You always used YouTube to post my science segments that I did on TV. So people already saw me as, in that regard and stayed with me through that. And then I think it was and ultimately I've always been my authentic self. And I think this is credit to TikTok. I will say TikTok's the one platform that accepted Chemical Kim for the way she looks. So I will say that was probably the big movement for me, that people embraced authentic Chemical Kim. Because when you get to know me, appearances aren't always what you might stereotypically think. Sometimes when you see me, when you get to know me, you see I'm just this nerdy science mom / teacher that really does care about that next generation and really does want people to always take that curiosity and learn the science to understand what you're curious about, or have the tools to understand it.
One question actually about sort of like analytics and like feeling the response from the platform, because I look through some of your videos and it's something that you're not the only creator that's like this, of like some a couple thousand views, couple thousand 100,000 views, 1,000,000 views, goes back down again, and like you're not the only creator that has this roller coaster of it. How do you maintain momentum through that? I know that part of it is just the passion, for the subject matter, but it does, I'm sure, require a certain amount of like, do I have to change my, style every week or two, or what do you think about that?
I give it credit to my generation. I think I come from that generation that you just stay the course. You don't give up. I'm someone that just never gives up. And with, I think, my driven passion for that, it does, hit me sometimes mentally and emotionally when I'm like, I know no one likes me, but I recognize it's not about me. It's about really, recognizing, okay, why are the views not there? And also the nice thing is that we do have a good group of creators, that we have managers, both TikTok and Meta, or all three, TikTok, Meta, and YouTube. And so we do support each other, and we share maybe this is why it's happening. It's happening not just to me, but so it's nice to know it might not just be you, that kind of approach.
And I imagine that's probably good advice also for people who are trying to get started, maybe new brands, of being aware of the fact that just because you're putting a lot of effort into it doesn't necessarily mean it'll pay off immediately, right?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, for sure.
Oh, we have a question. Kim, it sounds like you center your audience in your content strategy. Are there brands that you say no to because their ask is not in alignment?
Oh, gosh. 50% of the brands that reach out to me, I say no to.
Oh,
yes. Yep. Because if it's not focused on STEM, and also when I dive into that brand and, I see a message behind that doesn't align with, mainly for me, it's education and science education, then I'll turn it away for sure. Mm-hmm.
Could you go into that a little bit in more detail? Like, what is your evaluation criteria when you dive in? Are you spending time on the website? Do you reach out to people you might know that work there? Are you reading news releases?
Okay, so I'm going to give an app suggestion to a lot of you. It's called Clara, Clara. It is an app that has been developed, and the company is owned and created by my former TikTok manager, Kristen Danino. She's recently married, so I think her name has changed, so I apologize on that one, but Clara, Clara. And it's an app that us as creators use to see the brands that we've worked with and the experience that other creators have had with those brands. And it gives us a really good evaluation. And it's very much anonymous, but also the STEM creators on these platforms, we're a small group. And we all know each other, science teacher Phil and Mrs. BTV, like we're really good friends. Renegade Science, we're just Astro Alexandra. We all know each other and we all talk and communicate. So, we will heads up. We'll quickly message and say, hey, I think this brand's reaching out to you. Be careful. Things like that. Yeah.
I have another question. Can you talk about the production time required from when a brand reaches out to you and you say, yes, this sounds interesting, from that first conversation to when the content ends up online?
Actually, if I might interrupt, maybe can you start with your regular one? Like what do you usually do for your like typical videos? And then, how is it different with, an influencer one?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So with my regular videos, I'm making a science lesson. And of course, I try and polish it. And the biggest challenge, this is what I like about TikTok, it's now long, we can do longer videos, but I still try and keep that like less or a minute video format because I know that's the attention span of this generation. So it is a challenge to teach a lesson in a minute. It's crazy. So it will take me hours, especially if I'm doing it with a science activity, the cleanup, the setup, the mistakes. And I do try and sometimes show the mistakes as well, but it can be hours to make a 1 minute video, sometimes up to 10 hours to do a 1 minute video. Working with brands, I can triple that time because of the script writing, the rewrites. I'll create the video. There's some things in the video that were not right on polished. Again, sometimes brands are looking for that polished edit, and they need to recognize, I can edit, but I'm a chemistry professor. Like that's my background, right? I'm 54 years old. I know technology. I love technology, but I'm not a studio production. You didn't bring someone in to come and film me and work in a studio, right? You're asking to film. So there's a lot of work behind a 1 minute, behind a 1 minute video for sure. It's crazy. People would recognize that. Yeah.
Question regarding if you're seeing any trends with respect to employer branding content versus product marketing. So in the past, when I've owned an agency, it was kind of a trend at one point, and that content performed really well on social media. I'm curious to see, are you seeing a similar thing versus employer branding versus product marketing and how it performs on social media?
So are you talking about like whether it's getting a paid push behind it?
The content that would be created is talking about the culture and values within the company versus promoting the product that they're selling.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I'll be honest with you, I have not really, I couldn't give you a really good answer on that because I've never really studied it. Yeah. But I will say, again, going back, I know this isn't necessarily a question, but going back to that paid push, it's really as recent that the platforms have really tanked the views on anything that's paid. And I say recent, I would say the last 2 years. So it's hard to get a video pushed if it has that paid advert, little label.
One other question, kind of building on the same thing. What are science brands especially on TikTok that you think are doing a good job? Maybe other creators to point to, but and then especially organizations, businesses, schools.
Yeah. This changes a lot. It really does. And again, it's just, I don't know if there's a change in marketing or what the situation is, because I'll see one ad, say for Crest, that was really great. And then, I see another one like, what, the other one that was, but I'll share recently, I did 24, and I think it's come down to a lot of it is creativity and also recognizing you can tell whoever came up with that idea has hung out in the platform. And one recent was by Persil Laundry, and they did a 24-hour live stream that they had me join in. And I showed how laundry detergent glows with a black light. It was really fun. But they had other creators as well. So it was a 24-hour live stream on TikTok. And we were just brought in to do some dynamic things with Persil Laundry. And it was hosted by the host of Project Runway now, Kristen. And they did a fantastic job doing the hosting of it. And that was really creative, and they had great success. They had really good success with it.
Anyone else that you could point to as maybe a good example for folks to look at their content and what works well?
In terms of creators?
Yeah, but either creators or brands.
Or
There's
brands.
this, what you would say is like, these would be the ones to start with of like, want to see what science brands are doing. Science looks like on TikTok that is good.
Yeah, well, I'll mention two creators just because, again, on social media, I don't necessarily think it's the brand, it's the creator and how they have, and the two that I have already mentioned, Mrs. BTV and Chem Teacher Phil. They do really good videos when it comes to STEM with brands, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we are at the phase of wrapping things up for right now, unless there are any final questions. Thank you so much for your time, Kim.
Thank
This
you
has been
so
lovely.
much. That's fair.